Hey you, and a super warm welcome back to English Listening Boost. It's your favorite knowledge-hungry friend here, ready to plunge into something seriously interesting with you today.
And I'm your fellow explorer, excited to unpack this with you and see what truly matters.
You know the deal, we're all about getting smart without the headache, and today is no exception. We've got a fascinating landscape to traverse the American education system, from those first days of elementary school right up to the lofty halls of postgraduate studies, so settle in.
That's right. We've delved into a rich collection of information reports, official websites, the whole shebang, to bring you the essential structures, the surprising twists, and, well, a real sense of what it's like to navigate learning in America.
Our mission, as always, is to cut through the noise and deliver the most valuable and intriguing insights. Think of it as your express ticket to being well-informed about the sprawling topic, minus the information overload. We'll start by looking at how it's all organized and run, then journey through the K-12 years and into higher education.
Even touching on what student life is like. Yeah, the experiences of students from other countries, the financial side of things.
And to add some perspective, we'll even peek at the education system in Japan. Okay, so the American education system. It's kind of a beast, right?
Yeah, it is.
But let's start with the big picture, how it's governed. It's not like one person in charge of all the schools.
Absolutely not. What's really striking, I think, is just how decentralized it is, especially if you're familiar with a system like Japan's, which, tends to have a much more top-down structure.
Exactly. Imagine it as a system with different levels of responsibility. You've got the federal government, then the individual state governments, and finally those local school districts.
Right.
Now, at the federal level, mainly through the U.S. Department of Education, they set broad policies, manage federal funding through grants, and support the education goals set by the president.
Their big aims are usually promoting academic excellence and ensuring everyone has an equal shot at a good education.
And a lot of their influence comes through how they allocate money, right?
Yeah, funding is a big one.
Yeah.
And also through legal frameworks, things like the Every Student Succeeds Act and crucial civil rights laws, like the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act idea.
That's for students with disabilities.
Exactly. And Title IX, which is all about gender equity in education. They also collect a massive amount of data through the National Center for Education Statistics, or NCES.
Okay.
But here's a key point. Federal law actually prohibits them from directly controlling what schools teach. Section 1232A specifically. No federal curriculum mandates.
Right. Okay. So the states really carry the main responsibility for education then.
Definitely. They are the ones who enact the laws about how many years kids have to be in school. And the exact ages for this can actually differ a bit from one state to another. They also set the academic standards that schools need to meet, especially if they're getting state and federal funds. And they often oversee the standardized testing that happens. Plus, they provide a significant chunk of the money that goes to the local school districts.
How do they decide how much money goes where?
Often using formulas, that take things like student numbers into account, sometimes weighted formulas for different student needs.
Okay. And then you have the local level, the school districts.
Right. These are typically governed by elected school boards, and they're in charge of the day-to-day running of the schools. They put those state standards into practice.
So they choose the actual textbooks and stuff.
Yeah, they select the specific curriculum, textbooks, learning materials. They manage their budgets, which come from a mix of local property taxes and aid from the state and federal governments. And of course, they're responsible for hiring and paying the teachers.
That connection to local property taxes for a big chunk of school funding seems really significant, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely.
It suggests that the amount of money a school has access to can really depend on how wealthy the surrounding area is.
Precisely. This local control over both funding and even curriculum choices by these local education agencies, or LEAs, is a major reason why you see quite a bit of variation in the quality education, the resources available, the kinds of academic programs they can offer across different states, and even within different school districts in the same state.
So, rich neighborhoods, better schools, often.
Well, often more resources, yeah. Schools in wealthier neighborhoods where property values are higher tend to have more funding. That can mean better facilities, maybe higher teacher salaries, attracting more experience, a wider array of programs.
Which is quite different from a more centralized system like Japan's.
Exactly, where you tend to see more uniform national standards and funding. So in the U.S., where a student lives and the specific school district they're in can have a really substantial impact on their K-12 education.
We touched on it earlier, but it's worth emphasizing again. The federal government doesn't tell schools exactly what to teach, right?
But it definitely exerts influence through those funding conditions by enforcing civil rights laws and by the data they require schools to collect.
Mm-hmm. And speaking of data, the NCES is the main federal place for that. And for international students wanting official info on U.S. higher ed, there's Education USA, run by the State Department.
Good resources to know. Now, here's something really interesting. What about those Common Core state standards? I remember hearing a lot about that.
Ah, the Common Core. That was a fascinating development. It was an effort primarily driven by the states themselves, actually.
Not the federal government.
Not mandated federally, no. Though the federal government did initially encourage states to adopt it, like through grants, the goal was to create greater consistency in what students were expected to know in English language arts and mathematics, K through 12.
But it became controversial.
Oh yeah, quite controversial, for various reasons. And what you've seen is a real patchwork of adoption and implementation across different states. Some adopted it fully, some partially, some adapted it, some rejected it. So not really a national curriculum then.
No. Definitely not in the way you might find in Japan. It really highlights that ongoing tension in the U.S. between, the autonomy of individual states in education and the desire for more nationwide consistency.
Okay, so that gives us a sense of how the system is run. Now let's talk about the students themselves. We're talking about compulsory education, right? When are kids legally required to be in school?
Yes. In the U.S., compulsory education typically spans from kindergarten, around age 5 or 6. All the way through the 12th grade, so until about age 18.
But the exact ages can vary a bit.
They can, slightly, depending on the specific laws of each state. Some might start a bit earlier, some might let students leave a bit earlier under certain conditions. But K-12 is the general time frame.
And when we talk about schools, it's not just one type of institution. You've got public schools, which are probably what most people first think of.
Right. Public schools are funded through a combination of local, state, and federal taxes. And they are generally free for students who reside within the school district's boundaries. Enrollment is usually determined by where you live. Simple as that.
Okay. Then you have private schools?
Yep. Private schools are funded through tuition fees paid by parents. These can include schools affiliated with religious organizations, parochial schools, independent nonprofit schools, and even some for-profit schools. They might have selective admission processes, unlike most public schools, and often operate with very specific educational philosophies.
And the cost. You mentioned tuition.
It can really vary widely. I mean, anywhere from around, say, $7,707 a year on the lower end for maybe a local parochial school, up to $25,000 or more for some independent day schools. International private schools can hit $30,000, $50,000 easily, especially high schools or boarding schools.
Wow, that's a huge range. And what about those charter schools we hear about quite a bit? How did they fit in?
Charter schools are an interesting kind of in-between option. They are publicly funded, so they don't charge tuition.
Like public schools.
Right. But they are managed independently under a charter or a contract with the state or local district. This independence often allows them to implement maybe different educational approaches, different philosophies, have more autonomy than traditional public school.
And there's homeschooling too, right?
Absolutely. Homeschooling is where parents choose to educate their children at home. And we've actually seen a noticeable rise in the number of families opting for this in recent years.
So it sounds like there's a real landscape of school choice in the U.S. Lots of options.
There is, on paper. But it's really important to consider how this choice is often connected to socioeconomic status.
How so?
Well, the cost of private schools is obvious, right? Not everyone can afford that. But even access to highly regarded public schools, those are often located in areas with expensive housing.
Ah, right. So you have to be able to afford to live there.
Exactly. So families with greater financial resources just have more options. They can afford private tuition, or they can afford to live in neighborhoods with those well-funded, high-performing public schools.
Which means choice isn't really equal for everyone.
Unfortunately, no. It can actually exacerbate inequalities in educational opportunities. That access piece is critical.
That's a really crucial point to understand. Okay, let's move on to something that feels quite distinctly American. The PTA, or Parent-Teacher Association.
You're right, the PTA. Or sometimes it's just called the PA, Parent Association. It's a very common feature in U.S. schools, particularly in the public system.
And who's in it? Just parents and teachers?
Typically all parents, step-parents, legal guardians, foster parents. Basically, anyone who's in a primary caregiver role for a student are generally considered members. Teachers are involved too, of course.
So what do these PTAs actually do? What's their role in the schools?
They fulfill a really broad range of functions, actually. They advocate for students and families within the school and sometimes at the district level. They provide parents with information about school policies and events. They organize and run various activities, social events, academic enrichment programs. They might host workshops for parents on different topics. And very importantly, they often do a lot of fundraising for the school.
The fundraising to buy things for the school.
Yeah, things that the regular school budget might not cover, like maybe playground equipment, library books, technology, art supplies, field trips. They also coordinate volunteer efforts, parents helping out in the classroom at events, things like that.
What are the main benefits of having an active PTA in a school?
There are quite a few significant benefits, really. They definitely help improve communication and build stronger connections between parents, teachers, and the school administration.
That seems important.
It is. And they increase the level of parental involvement in school activities and even sometimes in decision-making. And research generally links higher parental involvement to better academic outcomes for students, maybe fewer behavioral issues too.
Okay.
Plus, they provide a huge amount of volunteer support, which can save the school money and manpower. They contribute to educational enrichment through that fundraising, and they really help foster a stronger sense of community within the school.
How are they typically structured? Is it formal?
Yeah, they usually have elected officers like a president, treasurer, secretary. They operate according to a set of bylaws, manage their own finances, hold regular meetings. And you often find PTA councils at the district or regional level, bringing together reps from different school PTAs.
It sounds like they can be a really positive force within a school.
They absolutely can be.
Yeah.
An active and, crucially, a well-funded PTA can significantly boost a school's resources and the range of programs they're able to offer.
But you said well-funded. Does that tie back to the socioeconomic thing?
Unfortunately, yes. This is another area where socioeconomic status plays a role. A PTA's ability to raise funds often reflects the affluence of the parent community. Schools in wealthier areas tend to have parents who have more time, more connections, maybe more disposable income, to contribute to PTA fundraising and volunteer efforts.
So those schools get even more resources, potentially widening the gap.
Exactly. It can unintentionally widen the resource gap between schools in wealthier versus less affluent areas. So while PTAs foster community, the disparities in their fundraising capacity can sometimes contribute to educational inequality. That's a nuance that might be quite different from parental involvement in, say, Japan.
Right. That makes sense. Okay, so that's the foundational stuff. Governance, types of schools, parental involvement. Now let's actually walk through the school system as a student would, starting with those early years in elementary school.
Okay, elementary school. This typically covers kindergarten through either the 5th or 6th grade. So children are generally around the ages of 5 to 11 or 12. The primary focus at this stage is really on building those fundamental academic skills, reading, writing, math.
What does a typical school day look like for these young students? Are they moving around a lot?
Usually not as much as older students. In elementary schools, students typically spend the majority of their day in a single classroom with one primary teacher who teaches most, if not all, of the core subjects.
So one main teacher all day?
Mostly, yeah. They might move to specialized classrooms for subjects like art, music, physical education, PE, or the library, but the bulk of the day is often in that one homeroom.
And the schedule?
A typical daily schedule will include dedicated time blocks for each subject: reading, math, science, social studies, plus, importantly, time for recess, which is playtime, and lunch. Some schools might also have specific, structured blocks. For instance, you might hear about a school having a 90-minute uninterrupted reading block, really focusing on literacy. Or maybe a 30-minute period for something called MTSS.
MTSS, what's that?
It stands for Multi-Tiered System of Supports. Think of it as targeted help for students who might need a little extra support in certain areas, like reading or math. It could be small group instruction a few times a week.
Okay, extra help built into the day. And what are the main things they're learning in those core subjects? What's the curriculum like?
The core subjects are usually reading, language arts, mathematics, science, and social studies. Standard subjects like health, PE, art, and music are also typically part of the week.
Let's break those down a bit. Reading, language arts.
Big focus here. Things like phonological awareness, hearing the sounds in words decoding, learning to read fluently and understand what they read, comprehension. building vocabulary, understanding grammar, and learning to write in different forms. Narratives, informational pieces, explanatory writing, even basic persuasive writing.
In math.
In math, they're building those foundational concepts. Understanding numbers, addition, subtraction, multiplication, division. Also geometry basics, measurement, fractions, and definitely problem-solving skills.
Wow.
Often they use an approach called CSA.
CSA.
Concrete, semi-concrete, abstract. So starting with physical objects, moving to pictures, then to the abstract symbols and numbers, trying to connect math to other subjects too.
Makes sense.
Science? Science at this level introduces the basic scientific method, observing, asking questions, making predictions, hypotheses. They might learn about topics like life cycles, ecosystems, weather, earth science basics, maybe some simple physics concepts like forces.
And social studies?
Social studies in elementary often starts close to home. Topics like home and family, school and friendships, the local community. Then it might expand to local or state history, like kids in California learn about California history in 4th grade usually. And an introduction to national history, maybe the foundations of American democracy, important symbols, things like that.
It sounds like they lay a pretty comprehensive groundwork in these early years. What about the way they are taught, the classroom atmosphere?
There's generally a real emphasis on creating welcoming, positive, supportive environments in elementary schools. You'll often see classrooms decorated brightly, lots of student work displayed, organized learning centers. Teachers really try to convey a sense of joy in learning and make students feel like they belong.
And teaching styles.
You see a mix. Effective styles often balance teacher guidance with student participation, encouraging cooperation, exploration, things like direct instruction, but also lots of hands-on activities, maybe some inquiry-based learning where kids explore questions. The authoritative approach, warm but with clear expectations, is often seen as beneficial.
And beyond the academics, what does student life look like for elementary school kids? Are there clubs and activities?
Oh yeah, extracurricular activities or ECAs start pretty early in many U.S. schools. At this level, they're really designed to help kids discover talents, have fun, build self-esteem, and develop social skills like leadership and cooperation.
What kinds of activities?
A real variety. Academic clubs like math clubs, science club, maybe a writing or chess club. Arts activities, art club, drama, maybe a school choir or band starting. Sports are usually introductory or intramural, meaning just within the school, not super competitive yet. You might see cultural clubs like Spanish club or technology clubs focused on coding basics. Sometimes community service clubs too, like an environmental group.
And are these accessible to all students? What about kids with disabilities?
That's an important point. Schools are required by law, under IDA, to provide equal access to school-sponsored ECAs for children with disabilities. This means providing appropriate accommodations, which are decided by the student support team, the IEP team. That could involve things like adapted sports equipment, accessible materials for clubs, or maybe even an aid to help the student participate fully.
That's good to know. It seems like there's a strong emphasis on being well-rounded from a young age.
There really is. The variety reflects that U.S. emphasis on developing the whole child. However, just like with school funding, the availability and quality of these activities can really depend on the school's resources.
Funding again.
Yep. And also on parents' ability to support participation, transportation, potential fees for outside programs if the school partners with them. Resource-poor schools just might not be able to offer the same range of ECAs.
It seems that early foundation in reading and math is crucial too.
Absolutely critical. That strong focus you see, like those 90-minute reading blocks, is because those skills are foundational for everything else. Success in science, social studies, even higher-level math later on really depends heavily on strong early literacy and analytical skills developed in elementary school.
And if kids struggle early on,
It can compound quickly. That's why you see things like MTSS trying to catch those difficulties early and provide intervention. But, the effectiveness of those interventions can vary depending on the school, the resources, the implementation.
that all makes perfect sense. So after navigating elementary school, the next big step in their journey is usually middle school.
That's right. Middle school, or sometimes it's called junior high school. It typically covers grades 6 through 8, so students are usually around 11 to 13 or 14 years old. Sometimes it might just be 7th and 8th grade, depending on the district structure.
And its main purposes.
It really serves as a transition. It bridges the gap between the more self-contained, single-teacher environment of elementary school and the more departmentalized structure they'll encounter in high school, preparing them for that next level.
How does the academic experience tend to shift when students enter middle school? Do they still have one main teacher?
Generally, no. This is a big change. In middle school, students typically have different teachers for each subject, an English teacher, a math teacher, a science teacher, and so on. And they move between classrooms for each class period.
Ah, okay. Like high school or college.
Exactly. It's preparing them for that model. The core subjects continue, of course, English, math, science, social studies, but they're explored in greater depth and with more complexity.
So tougher academics.
Generally, yeah, more rigor. In math, students might be in different tracks, some preparing for algebra, some taking algebra I, maybe even geometry, depending on the school and their previous performance. Science often becomes more specialized, maybe separate courses or units in general science, physical science, earth science, life science.
And social studies.
Social studies might delve into more specific historical periods or themes. You might see courses focused on American history, civics and government, economics, or world history and geography. Some schools use really engaging methods here too, like interactive simulations or projects. I know some use a program called History Alive, which gets kids actively involved.
And they start getting more choices in what they study.
Yes, this is another key difference from elementary. Middle school is usually when students begin to have more course choices through electives. A range of things. Foreign languages are common. Electives, Spanish, French, German, maybe Mandarin Chinese. Visual and performing arts become more developed. Band, choir, orchestra, drama, visual arts classes. Technology electives like computer skills or coding, and sometimes even courses designed for career exploration.
So more specialized learning and more academic choices start opening up. What about extracurricular activities at this age? Still important.
Absolutely. ECAs remain really crucial in middle school. They continue to help students develop skills, explore interests, build social connections. Plus, they offer great benefits like exercise, stress relief, teamwork practice, critical thinking, creativity outlets.
What are some common middle school ECAs?
Sports teams become more formalized, often competing against other schools. Basketball, soccer, volleyball, track and fields are popular. Music and arts programs usually expand. Concert band, jazz band, choir, school plays, art club. Academic clubs continue chess, reading, maybe debate team starts, STEM clubs, math competitions like Math Counts, Science Olympiad. You might see programming camps or clubs and volunteer work opportunities.
It sounds like the options really broaden.
They do. Some schools, especially well-resourced ones like, say, Harker School, which is often cited as an example, offer an incredibly extensive range. Competitive athletics, character development programs, global education trips, high-level performing arts, competitive speech and debate, advanced STEM activities, plus tons of student-led clubs on every imaginable topic. Creative writing, newspaper, podcasting. They even have mentorship programs. The goal is often explicitly stated as fostering teamwork, time management, civic responsibility.
It feels like middle school is a really pivotal time then, academically and socially.
It really is. You've got the increased academic demands, the introduction of electives requiring choices, plus a more complex social scene. The choices students make here, like which math class to take, which ECAs to join, can genuinely start to influence their high school path and even their college preparation down the line.
How is it with math, for example?
Well, succeeding in algebra I or geometry in middle school often opens the door to taking more advanced math and science courses in high school, like calculus or AP physics. That's often a prerequisite if you're thinking about a STEM major in college.
And the ECAs become more specialized too.
Yeah, they do. Middle school is often where students start to find activities they're truly passionate about, moving beyond just trying things out. This can influence future academic or even career interests. Socially, it's a huge developmental stage. Being involved can build confidence and belonging, while feeling disconnected can unfortunately have negative consequences.
Is it better to try lots of things or focus on a few?
That's interesting. Some middle schools have elective wheels, where students sample many different things. But the general advice, especially thinking ahead to high school and college apps, often leans towards demonstrating deeper, sustained involvement in a few areas you're passionate about, rather than just listing tons of activities. Middle school ECAs can be a great place to figure out what those passions are so you can pursue them more seriously in high school. It's like a training ground for that focused approach.
Right. That makes a lot of sense as a stepping stone. And then, of course, comes high school, which is the culmination of that whole K-12 experience.
Exactly. High school. Typically grades 9 through 12, so students are generally between the ages of 14 and 18, maybe 19.
And the goal here is graduation, getting that diploma. What does that involve?
Graduation requires earning a specific number of credits in various subjects. These requirements are set by both the state and the local school districts, so they can vary.
Credits, like in college.
Kind of, yeah. You earn credits for passing year-long or semester-long courses. While the specifics differ, requirements generally include maybe 2 to 4 years each of English, math, science, and social studies. Often there are requirements for foreign language, arts, PE, or health, too. You might see a district requiring, say, 4 credits of language arts, 3 of social studies, 3 of math, 3 of science, and so on, plus electives to reach a total number.
So completing those gets you the high school diploma.
Yes. But again, it's important that these graduation requirements are not nationally standardized. What it takes to get a diploma in one state might be slightly different from another.
And what about grades? GPA becomes important now, right?
Hugely important. Your grade point average, or GPA, is a cumulative average of all the grades you earn in your high school courses. It's usually calculated on a 4.0 scale, where an A is 4.0, B is 3.0, C is 2.0, D is 1.0, F is 0.
And colleges look at this closely.
Very closely. It's often one of the most critical factors in college admissions. Some schools also use weighted GPAs.
Weighted. What does that mean?
It means they give extra points for grades earned in more challenging courses like honors or advanced placement AP classes. So an A in an AP class might be worth 5.0 E points instead of 4.0, boosting the overall GPA and reflecting the tougher coursework.
Okay. What about the actual curriculum in high school? It sounds like it becomes even more specialized and definitely geared towards future pathways like college.
It does indeed. Students continue with core subjects, but at a higher level. English focuses more on literature analysis, complex composition, grammar nuances. Math progresses through algebra first, geometry, algebra second, then often pre-calculus, calculus, maybe statistics.
Yeah.
Science typically involves specific year-long courses like biology, chemistry, physics, maybe earth science or environmental science too. Social studies dives deeper into U.S. history, world history, U.S. government, economics.
And electives. Still lots of choice.
Oh yeah, a really wide array of electives for students to explore interests or potential career paths. More advanced foreign languages, diverse arts options, drama, visual arts, music theory, dance, lots in IT and technology, computer science principles, programming languages, web design. Vocational courses might still exist in some schools, woodworking, auto mechanics, and courses in business, marketing, finance.
And then you mentioned those advanced courses, honors, AP.
Right. Honors courses are basically more rigorous versions of the standard high school courses, covering topics in greater depth or at a faster pace.
And AP advanced placement.
AP courses are actually designed by the College Board, the same folks who do the SAT. They are college-level courses taught in high school. At the end of the year, students can take an AP exam in that subject.
And if they do well on the exam?
If they score well enough, usually a 3, 4, or 5 on a 5-point scale, many colleges will grant them college credit for that course or allow them to place into higher level courses when they start university.
So it can save time and money in college?
Potentially, yes. AP courses are definitely more demanding than standard high school classes and are seen as strong preparation for college-level work. They're often considered comparable to international qualifications like British A-levels or the International Baccalaureate, IB.
IB, is that another option?
Yes, the International Baccalaureate program is another highly rigorous, internationally recognized program of study that some high schools offer, either as a full diploma program or individual courses. It's also very well regarded by universities.
So high school is definitely a period strongly oriented towards preparing students for what comes next, especially college. How do those extracurricular activities fit into this picture now? Even more important.
Even more highly valued, I'd say, especially when it comes to the college application process. They really show colleges more about who you are beyond your grades and test scores.
What do colleges look for in ECAs?
They want to see that a student is well-rounded, yes, but also things like dedication, leadership, time management skills, teamwork, initiative, and skills developed outside the classroom. They're trying to understand what kind of person you're becoming and what unique contributions you might make to their campus community.
Are certain types of activities valued more than others?
Leadership roles are definitely a big plus. Things like being president of student government, captain of a sports team, maybe founding a club, or organizing a significant school or community project.
What else?
Work experience or internships are great. They show responsibility, practical skills, time management. Even significant family responsibilities, like caring for siblings or relatives, can be viewed positively as showing maturity. Sports, of course, demonstrate discipline, teamwork, leadership, performing under pressure. Academic teams and clubs like debate, math league, science olympiad Research projects show intellectual curiosity and commitment beyond required coursework. And community service or volunteering is important too. It shows passion for social issues, values, work ethic, and a commitment to making a difference. Interestingly, while youth volunteering is generally seen very positively, actual participation rates can fluctuate.
Is it better to do lots of different things or focus?
The general advice from college admissions folks is usually quality over quantity. They prefer to see sustained commitment and genuine passion for a few activities where you've ideally taken on leadership roles or made a real impact, rather than just superficial involvement in a long list of clubs.
So joining a club in senior year just to put it on the application isn't the best strategy?
Probably not as effective, no. Starting early in high school gives you time to show that long-term commitment and increases your chances of growing into those leadership positions.
It sounds like a lot of pressure, high GPA, tough courses like APIB, good test scores, impactful ECAs.
It absolutely can be. The competition for admission to selective colleges is intense, and this emphasis on checking all the boxes can lead students to overschedule themselves and maybe focus on activities they think look good rather than things they genuinely love.
Which, as you said, is quite different from a system like Japan's, with its heavy focus on entrance exams.
Exactly. Different systems emphasize and reward different qualities and pathways.
Speaking of college applications, you mentioned test scores. The SAT and ACT still play a pretty significant role, don't they? Even with all the talk about test optional.
They do, for many schools. The SAT and ACT are nationally recognized standardized tests designed to assess general academic aptitude and readiness for college work. Many colleges and universities still require or consider these scores.
But some are test optional now.
Yes, that became much more common, especially after COVID-19 disrupted testing. Many schools adopted test-optional policies, meaning students could choose whether or not to submit scores. However, some highly selective institutions like MIT, Dartmouth, Georgetown have actually gone back to requiring test scores recently. So the landscape is a bit mixed right now.
Okay. What's the difference between the SAT and ACT?
The SAT currently has two main sections, math and evidence-based reading and writing. It's scored on a scale from 400 to 1600. The ACT has four sections: English, mathematics, reading, and science. It also has an optional writing essay section. The main score is an average of the four sections on a scale of 1 to 36.
Science on the ACT, but not SAT.
The ACT has a dedicated science section that tests scientific reasoning skills, interpreting data from graphs and experiments. The SAT incorporates some science-related passages and data analysis into its other sections, but doesn't have a standalone science score. Also, the SAT recently went fully digital and is adaptive, meaning the difficulty adjusts based on your performance.
So students really need to check what their target schools require.
Absolutely. Research the testing policy for each school required, optional, or maybe even test blind, meaning they won't look at scores even if submitted. And look at the average score ranges, often called the middle 50% of admitted students, to get a sense of the target. International students can usually take these tests in their home countries.
You mentioned the controversy around these tests.
Right. While they aim to provide a standard measure, critics argue they can reflect socioeconomic disparities, access to expensive test prep, for example, and might disadvantage certain student groups. That's a big reason for the test optional movement.
But the schools bringing them back must see value.
They argue the scores can still be a useful predictor of college success, alongside other factors, and some feel it can actually help identify talented students from less resourced backgrounds who might not have other application elements that shine as brightly. It's an ongoing debate.
And just to circle back, those APIB courses aren't just for looks on the application, right?
Definitely not. As we said, doing well on the exams can potentially earn you actual college credit or let you skip introductory courses. That can be a real advantage, saving both time and tuition money once you get to college.
Okay, so that's a comprehensive look at the whole K-12 journey, from kindergarten crayons to college applications. Let's now move on to what happens after high school. American higher education. Big topic.
It is a big topic. American higher education offers a truly diverse landscape of institutions and degree types. Let's start at the undergraduate level. You primarily have associate's degrees and bachelor's degrees.
Associate's degrees. Those are usually 2-year programs.
Typically, yes. Often offered at community colleges. For some students, an associate's might be their final degree, equipping them for certain careers. For many others, it serves as a stepping stone. They complete the associate's and then transfer to a 4-year college or university to finish a bachelor's degree.
And bachelor's degrees.
Those are usually 4-year programs like a Bachelor of Arts is BA or Bachelor of Science BS. They require students to earn around 120 to 130 semester credits usually, offered by both colleges and universities.
And the range of subjects or majors?
Oh, incredibly wide. Across fields like arts and architecture, engineering, humanities, social sciences, natural sciences, business, health professions, you name it. A smaller university might offer a BA in liberal studies or a BS in nursing. A large research university like UCLA will have majors like aerospace engineering, biology, economics, English, computer science, hundreds of options sometimes.
Okay. And what educational opportunities are available after someone completes a bachelor's degree?
So you move into graduate degrees. The first level is typically a master's degree.
Like an MA or MS?
Exactly. Master of Arts,
MA.
Master of Science, MS. Also common are the Master of Business Administration, MBA, Master of Education, MEd, Master of Fine Arts, lots of specialized master's degrees.
How long do those usually take?
Typically 1 to 3 years after the bachelor's, requiring maybe 30 to 64 graduate level credit hours. The focus is on much more specialized study within a field. Often there's a requirement for a thesis, a capstone project, or comprehensive exams. Examples could be an MBA, an MS in nursing, an MA in education, or an MS in bioengineering like at UCLA.
And the highest level?
That would be the doctoral degrees. The most common academic one is the Doctor of Philosophy, the PhD. But there are also professional doctorates, like the Doctor of Education, ADD, Doctor of Business Administration, DBA, and degrees required for certain professions like the Doctor of Medicine, MD for physicians, or the Juris Doctor, JD for lawyers, Doctor of Dental Surgery, DDS, for dentists.
PhDs usually involve a big research project.
Yes. The hallmark of the PhD is conducting significant original research and writing a dissertation defending that research. Professional doctorates might focus more on advanced practice and application within the field.
You mentioned different types of institutions, too.
Right. You have community colleges, primarily offering those 2-year associate's degrees and transfer programs. You have liberal arts colleges, which really focus on undergraduate education across a broad range of arts and sciences, often smaller residential campuses. And then you have the large research universities, which offer the full spectrum, bachelor's, master's, doctoral degrees, and have a major focus on research alongside teaching.
It seems there's a lot of flexibility in the U.S. system compared to maybe more rigid tracks elsewhere.
That's a really key feature, I think. The U.S. offers multiple pathways. That community college transfer route is huge for access. You can often pursue interdisciplinary majors, combining different fields. Some universities allow double majors, or even let undergrads start taking graduate courses early.
Like UCLA, you mentioned.
Yeah, places like UCLA might offer double degrees, or options to start a master's as an undergrad, or create your own interdisciplinary major, combining things like, say, atmospheric sciences and mathematics.
That flexibility sounds great, but maybe also complicated.
It can be both. It's an advantage for students who want to tailor their education. But it definitely puts more responsibility on the student and their academic advisors to navigate all the options, understand requirements, and make sure they're on track for their goals. It requires careful planning. For students coming from systems with very defined educational paths, this breadth of choice can be liberating, but maybe a bit overwhelming at first.
It sounds like navigating the admissions process for these various types of institutions can also be quite intricate, especially with this idea of holistic review that you hear about.
That's absolutely right. U.S. college admissions, particularly at the more selective institutions, often uses this holistic review approach. It means they look beyond just grades and test scores to consider the whole applicant.
What kind of things do they look at?
Several key components. Your high school transcript is still fundamental. They look at your GPA, yes, but also the rigor of your courses. Did you challenge yourself with honors, AP, or IB classes if they were available? Standardized test scores, SAT or ACT, as we discussed. Depending on the school's policy, these can still be a significant factor. Your extracurricular activities looking for that passion, leadership, commitment, impact.
It's essays.
Very important.
Yeah.
Your essays or personal statements are your chance to really convey your unique voice, share meaningful experiences, reflect on your growth, and articulate your aspirations. It's where you tell your story.
And letters of recommendation.
Yes, letters from teachers and your school counselor provide external perspectives on your character, abilities, work ethic, potential contributions to the campus community. Some universities might also offer interviews, which can be another chance to share more about yourself and ask questions.
So they're trying to build a diverse class, not just based on numbers.
Exactly. Admissions committees are often trying to assemble a diverse student body, diverse in backgrounds, experiences, perspectives, talents, individuals who will contribute to the campus community in various ways, both inside and outside the classroom. The idea is to look at applicants more wholly, as one source put it, not just as test-taking experts.
Does that make it harder to predict admission chances, especially for international students?
It can, because holistic review involves subjectivity. While it aims for fairness by considering context, it can be challenging, especially for international students, to know exactly how their experiences and qualifications from a different educational system will be interpreted.
So the story matters a lot.
Very much. The narrative you build through your essays, recommendations, and how you frame your activities is crucial. It requires careful articulation, maybe even some cultural translation for international students to convey the significance of their achievements in a way that resonates. That's why resources like Education USA and doing deep research on individual university priorities are so important.
Okay, so let's say a student gets in. Once they're actually enrolled in college, what is the academic life generally like? How does it work?
Academic life in U.S. universities is typically structured around a credit system, usually semester credit hours or SCH.
How do those work?
Basically, 1 credit hour usually represents about 1 hour of in-class instruction per week, plus maybe 2 hours of expected out-of-class work over the course of a semester, which is typically 15, 16 weeks.
And a full-time student takes?
Usually around 12 to 15 credit hours per semester. The goal is to earn about 30 credits per academic year to stay on track for graduation in 4 years for a bachelor's degree.
Which needs how many credits total?
Generally around 120 to 130 semester credits for a bachelor's. Master's degrees might require 30 to 64 credits beyond the bachelor's. Some schools use a quarter system instead of semesters, so the numbers are different. Maybe 180 quarter credits for a bachelor's.
And grades still matter, obviously. GPA?
Definitely. Grades are usually A, B, C, D, F, often with plus-minus variations like B plus YA. Each grade has a point value, A 4.0, A 3.7, B plus C.3, etc. Your GPA is calculated by dividing your total quality points, grade points times credit hours for each course, by the total credit hours you've attempted.
And that GPA is important for?
Lots of things. Maintaining good academic standing, eligibility for scholarships or honors programs, maybe joining certain organizations, and definitely for applying to graduate school or professional programs later on.
What are the typical ways that courses are actually taught in American universities? Is it all just big lectures?
Not necessarily, though lectures are common, especially for large introductory courses. The professor presents material, often with slides, examples, maybe some Q&A, but there's a real push nowadays towards incorporating more active learning, even in big lectures. Things like asking students to discuss a question with a neighbor, pair share, using clicker questions or online polling tools like Top Hat for instant feedback, short discussion breaks.
So trying to keep students engaged.
Exactly. Okay. Recognizing that purely passive listening isn't always the most effective way to learn. Then you have seminars.
Seminars, smaller classes.
Yes, much smaller, more interactive, focused on discussion, student presentations, in-depth exploration of topics, more common in upper-level undergraduate courses and graduate programs.
Okay, and labs.
Labs are hands-on sessions, usually for science, engineering, sometimes social science courses too. They let students apply theoretical knowledge, develop practical skills, conduct experiments. Often they accompany a lecture course.
Right. What about discussion sections?
Discussion sections, or sometimes called recitations, are small group meetings often linked to large lecture courses. They're usually led by a teaching assistant, or TA, who's typically a graduate student.
And the point is?
To provide a space for students to ask questions in a smaller setting, discuss the lecture material more deeply, work through problems or examples, it complements the large lecture.
Are there other formats?
Oh yeah. Clinical experiences for fields like nursing or medicine, CLN. Fieldwork, FLW, for things like anthropology or social work. Independent study, IND, where a student works one-on-one with a professor on a research project. Practicums or internships, PRA, for professional experience. Project-based learning, case studies, online courses, blended or hybrid courses. Lots of variety.
That move towards active learning seems significant.
It really is. There's a lot of pedagogical research suggesting that student engagement enhances learning and retention, moving away from just the sage on the stage model towards more student-centered approaches that recognize diverse learning styles. For students used to more traditional lecture formats, this emphasis on participation might be a really engaging, maybe even challenging aspect of U.S. higher ed.
It sounds like there's also a significant amount of academic support available to students within the university to help them navigate all this.
Absolutely. Academic advising is really crucial. Advisors help students select courses, plan their degree path, understand requirements, explore majors and careers, navigate university policies, connect with resources.
Is it mandatory to see an advisor?
Policies vary, but it's strongly encouraged, especially early on. And students are generally expected to be proactive, schedule appointments, come prepared with questions, take responsibility for their choices. It's a partnership.
What other support is there?
Most universities offer tutoring services, often free, for various subjects. It can be individual or group sessions. Writing centers are invaluable, providing feedback and support on writing assignments for any course. Libraries offer extensive resources, research help from librarians, study spaces, and disability services offices provide accommodations and support for students with documented disabilities.
So students really need to take initiative to use these resources.
Yes, definitely. The flexibility of the U.S. system, the emphasis on managing your GPA, it all puts a lot of responsibility on the student to actively seek advising, use tutoring or the writing center when needed, and manage their own academic journey. You have to know the policies, meet deadlines, plan ahead. It requires strong self-management and planning skills and knowing how and when to ask for help. It's not just about being smart, it's about navigating the system effectively.
Moving beyond the classroom and academics, what is the overall campus life experience like for students in the U.S.? It seems like a big part of the picture.
It's a huge part. Campus life is often a really integral and defining aspect of the American higher education experience for many students.
Starting with where they live, dorms.
Yeah, many universities, especially for first-year students, freshmen, either require or strongly encourage them to live in on-campus residence halls or dormitories. There are usually various room types, singles, doubles, suites. And dorms often have common lounges, study areas, places for socializing.
I've heard of living learning communities.
Right, LLCs. Some universities group students in housing based on shared academic interests, majors, or themes, like a sustainability LLC or a leadership LLC. It creates a built-in community.
And food.
On-campus dining usually includes multiple dining halls with buffet-style or station options, plus smaller cafes, maybe convenience stores. Students typically purchase meal plans with a set number of meals per week or semester, or points to spend.
But campus life is way more than just dorms and food, right?
Yeah.
Clubs and organizations.
Oh, absolutely. U.S. universities are famous for having a staggering number of student organizations and clubs. Seriously, large universities can have hundreds. Syracuse has over 300. Wisconsin-Madison boasts over 900.
Wow. What kinds of clubs?
Everything imaginable. Academic clubs related to majors, like the Chemistry Club or History Society, cultural groups, Black Student Union, Chinese Students Association, etc. Arts groups, theater troupes, a cappella groups, dance teams, orchestras, political and activist groups, religious and spiritual life groups, volunteer and service organizations, sports and recreational clubs, from competitive club teams to casual intramural leagues, Greek life fraternities and sororities, and countless special interest groups, anime club, hiking club, video game club, cooking club, you name it.
So something for everyone.
Pretty much, yeah. And universities also host tons of events, social gatherings, dances, concerts, guest lectures by famous speakers, art exhibitions, movie nights, and of course those big intercollegiate athletic events, football games, basketball games, which can be a major focus of campus culture and school spirit at some places.
It really sounds like that holistic development idea extends beyond academics.
Definitely. It's often seen as a total immersion experience. As places like Syracuse say, campus life is a holistic experience for personal growth and belonging. Or Wisconsin. Real learning happens inside and outside the classroom. The sheer density of clubs, events, and on-campus living fosters constant interaction and engagement beyond formal classes. This might be different from systems where more students commute or where student life isn't as integrated with the university itself.
And for international students, this campus life must be key for adjusting.
Hugely important. Actively participating is often vital for cultural immersion, practicing English, and building that crucial social support network.
You mentioned diversity earlier. How does that play out in campus life?
U.S. universities increasingly emphasize diversity and inclusion, aiming to create welcoming environments for everyone. It's seen as enhancing learning by exposing students to different perspectives, encouraging better communication, addressing historical opportunity gaps, and strengthening the whole community.
Are there specific support structures for this?
Yes, many universities have dedicated offices like Multicultural Student Affairs, OMSA, LGBTQ plus student life centers, specific support programs for first-generation, low-income, or undocumented students. Plus the international student services we'll talk more about, spiritual life offices supporting various faiths, and disability services. It's often a proactive effort to support diverse groups and foster inclusion, not just letting diversity happen passively. That might be different from approaches elsewhere.
And career help, does that fit into campus life?
Yes, definitely. Universities provide career counseling services to help students explore options, choose majors, develop job search skills, resume writing, interviewing practice, and find internships or jobs. They offer career assessments, workshops, host job fairs where employers come to campus, and provide individual counseling. Advisors also help connect coursework to career goals and teach networking skills. It's all part of preparing students for life after graduation.
That sounds like a really supportive and engaging environment that goes way beyond just sitting in lectures. Now, let's focus specifically on international students who choose to pursue their education in this American system. What are the key things they need to know?
For international students, there are definitely some specific admission and visa considerations for both K-12 and higher education.
Let's start with K-12. Can an international student just enroll in a local public school?
It's complicated. Private K-12 schools can enroll international students on F1 academic or M1 vocational visas and any grade K-12, as long as the school is certified by SEVP, the Student Exchange Visitor Program.
Okay, private schools are an option. What about public?
Public high schools, grades 9-12, can also get SEVP certified to accept F1 students, but there are major restrictions. First, the student can only enroll for a maximum of 12 months total across all public schools.
Only 1 year.
Yes. And second, the student must pay the full, unsubsidized per capita cost of their education before the visa is issued.
Pay tuition for public school. How much is that?
Because public schools are funded by local taxes, this unsubsidized cost can be very high, often comparable to private school tuition. So that 12-month limit, plus the high cost, makes attending a U.S. public high school on an F1 visa extremely rare and not a pathway to a diploma for most.
A private school is the more realistic K-12 option for F1 students.
Generally, yes, if they're coming specifically for K-12 education on an F1 visa.
Yeah.
Now, dependents kids here because their parent has a work visa or a student visa like F2 or M2 dependents, they might be required by state law to attend school, K-12, and those public schools don't need SEVP certification for them. That's different.
Okay, that clarifies K-12. What about higher education visas?
For higher education college, university international students typically need an F1 visa for academic programs or an M1 visa for vocational training. The college or university must be SEVP certified, and they are the ones who issue the Form I-20, which is the certificate of eligibility you need to apply for the F1 or M1 visa at a U.S. embassy or consulate abroad.
So getting that I-20 from the university is the first big step.
After being admitted, yes. It's crucial for the visa process.
Once international students arrive in the U.S. for college, are there specific support services available to help them adjust and succeed? It must be a big transition.
It is a big transition. And yes, universities typically have dedicated international student services or ISS offices. Sometimes they have other names like the Office of International Affairs, OIA, at University of Chicago.
What do these offices do?
They provide a range of really crucial support. A big part is visa and immigration advising, helping students understand the complex rules, maintain their legal status, apply for things like work authorization if applicable.
Very important.
Absolutely. They also often provide academic advising tailored to the specific needs of international students, maybe helping them understand the U.S. academic system. And a huge focus is on cultural adjustment and integration.
How do they help with that?
Through things like orientation programs, specifically designed for international students when they first arrive, workshops on U.S. culture, academic expectations, navigating daily life, maybe language tables or conversation partner programs to practice English and meet domestic students. They also often organize social events and activities to help international students connect with each other and the broader campus community.
And they can use the regular support services, too.
Of course. General academic support like tutoring and writing centers are available to all students. And mental health and counseling services are really important resources too, especially when dealing with the stresses of adapting to a new environment far from home.
So the ISS office is like a home base?
In many ways, yes. They serve that vital regulatory compliance role, visas, but also a crucial support and integration function. A good, well-resourced ISS office can make a huge difference in an international student's success and overall well-being. They help ease the transition, foster belonging, and help students overcome challenges. The quality and scope of services can vary, though, so it's definitely something prospective students should research when choosing a university.
What about financial aid? We know U.S. higher education is expensive. Are there scholarship opportunities specifically for international students?
There are, but it's important to manage expectations. Opportunities exist, but they tend to be quite competitive, especially at the undergraduate level.
What's a major example?
One really well-known and prestigious program is the Fulbright Foreign Student Program. This is funded by the U.S. government and enables graduate students, young professionals, and artists from over 160 countries to study or conduct research in the U.S.
Graduate students mainly.
Primarily, yes. Fulbright awards about 4,000 scholarships annually worldwide. It's administered through binational commissions or U.S. embassies in participating countries, so eligibility and application processes vary by country.
What about scholarships directly from universities?
Many universities do offer their own institution-specific scholarships for international students. However, these are often highly competitive and frequently may not cover the full cost of attendance, tuition, fees, living expenses.
Are they based on merit or need?
It varies. Some are merit-based, academic achievement, talent. Some are need-based, demonstrated financial need. Some might be targeted towards students from specific regions or studying specific fields. The University of Texas at Austin, for instance, lists numerous scholarships for internationals, but each has specific criteria.
Can international students get loans?
Some institutions might offer limited loan programs for international students, like emergency loans or specific tuition loans. But it's crucial to know that international students are generally not eligible for U.S. federal student aid, the grants and loans that domestic students access by filling out the FFSO free application for federal student aid.
So no federal Pell Grants or federal student loans?
Correct. That's a major difference. This means international students are much more reliant on personal funds, family support, scholarships from their home country's government or organizations, or those limited and competitive university-specific scholarships and aid.
So the sticker price we talked about earlier is often closer to the real cost for international students.
Very often, yes. Because they have less access to the aid that brings down the net price for many domestic students. Funding is a huge factor and potential barrier that requires really careful planning and research well in advance.
Definitely important for prospective international students and their families to be aware of those financial realities. Are there any broader initiatives in the U.S. that aim to promote international education itself and maybe foster cross-cultural understanding?
Yes, there are several important initiatives on a larger scale. The U.S. Department of State's Bureau of Educational and Cultural Affairs, or ECA, plays a big role here.
What does ECA do?
Its mission is to promote mutual understanding between the people of the U.S. and people of other countries through educational and cultural exchange programs. They target youth, students, educators, artists, athletes, emerging leaders from the U.S. and over 160 other countries.
Is Fulbright part of ECA?
Yes, Fulbright is a flagship ECA program. Another major one is the International Visitor Leadership Program, IVLP, which brings current and emerging foreign leaders to the U.S. for short-term visits. ECA also supports cultural heritage preservation globally and provides resources on U.S. culture and English language learning.
And Education USA.
Education USA is also supported by the State Department. It's that global network of over 430 advising centers in more than 175 countries. Their job is to promote U.S. higher education and provide accurate, unbiased information to prospective international students about studying in the U.S. They're a key resource.
Do individual universities have their own initiatives too?
Many do, yes. For example, Western Michigan University has the Hennick Institute for Global Education. Institutes like this work on things like internationalizing the curriculum for all students, integrating global learning outcomes, running study abroad programs, enhancing intercultural competence on campus, and preparing students for a global workforce.
It sounds like these government programs like ECA and Education USA are partly about diplomacy too.
Absolutely. They're often seen as tools of soft power or public diplomacy. The goal isn't just education in isolation. It's about building positive relationships, fostering mutual understanding, promoting friendly, peaceful relations, as ECA puts it.
By connecting people.
Exactly. Bringing international students and scholars to the U.S., sending Americans abroad. These exchanges create direct people-to-people connections. foster cultural understanding, potentially cultivate a more nuanced view of the U.S. overseas, and expose Americans to global perspectives. That broader context is important for understanding the government's investment in international education.
Now let's switch gears back to a topic that's definitely on the minds of anyone considering education in the U.S., whether domestic or international. The cost of it all. It's notoriously expensive, right?
It certainly has that reputation, and the costs can be substantial. Let's break it down by level. For K-12, public schools are generally tuition-free for residents because they're funded by taxes.
But are there other costs?
Yes, there can still be associated costs, fees for activities, sports, maybe some materials, field trips. These can add up, ranging from maybe around $1,000 a year to potentially over $20,000 annually in some cases, depending on the school, the grade, how involved the student is in extras. One estimate put the total potential spending for a public K-12 education at around $162,900 over 13 years.
Wow. And private K-12?
Private K-12 requires tuition, and the averages vary a lot. For private elementary, the average might be around $7,770, but the range is huge, maybe $5,300 up to $25,000 or more per year. International private schools often run $20,000, $30,000 annually.
In high school?
Private high school tuition averages maybe around $13,000. But again, international private high schools can easily be $20,000 to $50,000 a year. And boarding schools where students live there, those can exceed $50,000, even $60,000 or $70,000 per year at elite schools. The average total estimated cost for private K-12 education was pegged at around $292,700.
So a significant difference between public and private K-12 costs overall. Now, what about higher education, college and university?
That's where the costs can really climb. And again, they vary widely based on several factors. Public versus private institution, 2-year versus 4-year, and for public schools, in-state versus out-of-state residency.
Let's start with public universities. Cheaper for residents, right?
Generally, yes. Public universities get state funding, so they offer lower tuition rates for students who are legal residents of that state. The average in-state tuition and fees are around $9,410 per year.
And for out-of-state students, including internationals?
Much higher. The average out-of-state tuition and fees at public universities are around $23,890 per year, more than double.
Okay. And private universities?
Generally more expensive than even out-of-state public tuition. Private universities rely much more heavily on tuition revenue. The total annual cost, including tuition, fees, and room and board at prestigious private universities, can easily range from, say, $62,500 at Princeton up to $73,500 or more at places like Columbia. That's per year.
And that's just tuition, fees, room and board.
Right. You still have to add costs for books and supplies, which can be $1,000 plus a year. Transportation, personal expenses, it adds up quickly.
What about those English language programs for international students?
If needed, intensive English programs, sometimes called IEP or ALCB, add another layer of cost before starting the degree program. They can run anywhere from $1,500 to $2,500 for just a 4-week session, or $5,000 to $10,000, maybe more per semester.
It's crucial to remember that sticker price versus net price idea, though, right? Especially for domestic students.
Absolutely. The published prices can be daunting. But many students, particularly domestic undergrads, receive financial aid scholarships, grants from the federal government like Pell Grants, or the state or the institution, plus federal student loans. This aid significantly reduces the actual net price they pay.
But less so for international students.
Generally, yes. As we discussed, international students have far less access to U.S. federal aid and often more limited institutional aid. So for many international students, the gap between the sticker price and the net price is much smaller. The sticker price is often uncomfortably close to what they'll actually need to fund.
That really highlights the financial challenge. And looking at the K-12 costs, too, it's clear education is a major investment from start to finish.
It really is.
Yeah.
Hundreds of thousands of dollars for a full K-12 plus university path is very common, especially if private options are involved or if you're paying out-of-state tuition. It requires serious long-term financial planning for families.
Okay, the financial picture is definitely sobering, but important to understand. Now, to gain a slightly different perspective on the whole system, let's briefly touch upon some key comparisons between the American education system and the system in Japan. That contrast seems illuminating.
It really is. Comparing the American and Japanese systems brings some fundamental structural and curricular differences into sharp focus. We've talked a lot about the U.S. system being decentralized.
Right, state and local control over curriculum.
Exactly. Japan, in contrast, has historically operated with a much more standardized national curriculum, overseen by the central government ministry. MEXT. Although, interestingly, while the U.S. has seen pushes for more standardization like Common Core, Japan has actually been moving towards some deregulation of its unified standards recently.
What about the school year?
Different timing. The U.S. typically runs August, September to May, June, with that long summer break. Japan's school year starts in April and ends in March, with shorter, more frequent breaks.
And teaching styles. You mentioned the U.S. push for active learning.
Right. U.S. education often aims to be more student-centered, interactive, emphasizing critical thinking, creativity, individual expression. Traditional Japanese education has often been more teacher-centered, maybe more lecture-based, with a strong emphasis on group harmony, cooperation, discipline, mastering established knowledge. Though, of course, both systems are evolving.
Classroom atmosphere.
U.S. classrooms can often feel more informal. Teacher-student interactions might be more casual. Japanese classrooms tend to be more formal, students showing high respect for authority. Also, in Japan, teachers often rotate between homerooms, whereas in the U.S., especially elementary, the students might stay put more.
And how learning is assessed. Big difference there.
Huge difference in emphasis. The U.S. uses a real mix: tests, quizzes, projects, presentations, papers, class participation. Japan places a very heavy emphasis on standardized tests and, crucially, those high-stakes university entrance examinations that largely determine a student's future path.
What about student life outside the classroom? Uniforms.
Uniforms are very common in Japan, almost universal in secondary school, much less common in U.S. public schools, though some private and charter schools require them.
And school cleaning. I've heard Japanese students clean their own schools.
Yes, osochi. It's a daily routine, part of the educational philosophy, teaching responsibility and community ownership. In the U.S., cleaning is almost always done by paid custodial staff.
Commuting.
Many Japanese students walk, bike, or use Japan's excellent public transport. In the U.S., especially outside dense cities, students are more likely to take yellow school buses, be driven by parents, or drive themselves if they're old enough.
Extracurriculars. Both have them, right?
Both do, but the nature and emphasis differ. U.S. ECAs are incredibly diverse and, as we've stressed, heavily weighted in college admissions for showing well-roundedness, leadership, passion. Japanese school clubs, bukatsu, are also very important, often demanding intense commitment, focused on mastering a skill, like kendo or baseball, but maybe less directly tied to university admission than U.S. ECAs are. Plus, many Japanese students attend juku, cram schools, after regular school, specifically for exam prep.
Parental involvement. PTAs versus...
Parental involvement is high in both, but maybe manifests differently. The U.S. PTA model, with its significant potential role in fundraising and resource supplementation based on parent wealth, might be quite different from typical forms of parental support and school interaction in Japan.
That contrast in college admissions really stands out. Holistic review versus entrance exams.
It's fundamental. It reflects different cultural values about what defines a successful student and how potential is measured. The U.S. system, aiming for holistic review, may encourage broader exploration and development of diverse skills. The Japanese system, historically reliant on exams, fosters deep academic discipline and test-taking expertise. Understanding that difference, what colleges are looking for, is vital for students navigating between the systems.
And things like the school cleaning reflect different approaches to teaching values, too.
Yeah, integrating shared responsibility like osoji or communal school lunches directly into the daily routine is a different way of teaching social responsibility and life skills compared to the U.S., where those might be addressed through specific character education programs or volunteer clubs, but not usually as shared operational tasks for everyone.
That's a really insightful comparison. It definitely helps to illuminate the unique characteristics of the American system by seeing it alongside another model. So, as we begin to wrap things up here,
right. So to kind of summarize our deep dive today, the U.S. education system is really distinguished by its decentralized governance, that wide array of choices available at pretty much every level, and this strong emphasis on the holistic development of students from elementary school all the way through higher education.
we walked through that K-12 journey, building foundations early, then specializing more in high school, preparing for what's next.
Mm-hmm. And we saw how extracurriculars are encouraged throughout, but become particularly significant in high school for those college applications. Standardized tests like the SAT and ACT, despite the debates, still play an important role for many institutions.
And in higher education, we saw that vast diversity of institutions and degree programs, the often holistic admissions process.
The academic life structured around credits, varied teaching methods needing active student engagement, and that really integral role of campus life dorms, clubs, the whole experience.
We also addressed specific considerations for international students, the visa rules, the complexities and costs of public K-12 access, funding challenges for higher ed.
But also the dedicated support services like ISS offices and important scholarship opportunities like Fulbright.
And we definitely covered the cost, a significant investment, especially for private schools and out-of-state or private college tuition. We saw how local funding and even PTA activities can contribute to resource inequalities.
Right. And comparing it to Japan highlighted the lower standardization, the greater student choice and flexibility in the U.S., but also the resulting variations and potential unpredictability. It underscores the different pathways to success and maybe different definitions of an excellent student. The U.S. often valuing a broader range of qualities beyond just academic scores, like leadership, creativity, community impact.
So overall,
the U.S. education system is undeniably complex, incredibly diverse. But that diversity also offers the potential for students to really tailor educational paths to their own individual needs and goals. The keys to success seem to be being well-informed, actively using the resources available, and really engaging fully in the process.
well, that was a truly in-depth exploration of the American education system. We really covered a lot of ground, from governance to finances, K-12 to college, and that fascinating comparison with Japan. Hopefully you listening now have a much clearer, more comprehensive understanding of this intricate topic.
Yeah, we really only scratched the surface on many of these huge areas, of course.
Yeah.
But the aim was to give you a solid overview, some key insights into how education fundamentally works in the United States.
So here's a final thought for you to ponder as we close out. Considering that decentralized nature of the U.S. education system we discussed so much, how might that characteristic influence the actual academic and social experience of a student who moves from one state to another during their K-12 years? Think about how that might compare to a student making a similar move between prefectures within the more centralized system of Japan. What differences might they encounter?
Ooh, that's a really good question. It gets right at the real-world impact of these different structures on students' lives. Definitely something to think about.
Thanks so much for joining us for this deep dive on English Listening Boost. We truly hope you found it both informative and helpful in expanding your understanding.
Yeah, thanks for sticking with us through all that detail.
We're always on the lookout for new and interesting topics to explore, so please stay tuned for future deep dives. And if you have any feedback for us or any further questions that popped into your head as you were listening, please don't hesitate to reach out.
We'd love to hear from you.
Until our next exploration together, keep listening and keep on learning.